I'm always excited to talk about this project. I'm going to run through a little bit of the background. I know several of you in the room are very familiar with this project, and I've seen many new faces, so I'm going to give you a little bit of the background on this, and then we're going to get into some preliminary results. The past 2 years, I've given you guys an update annually and really not had very many results yet to share, and just kind of talk to you guys about what we were planning to do. So now we actually have some stuff to share. So this has been an ongoing project that FWC, CHNEP, Bonefish Tarpon Trust, and Charlotte County have been collaborating with for the past almost 5 years now, maybe longer. And this basically started because we were trying to, we as FWC biologists identified some critical nursery habitats for snook and tarpon, two of our area's really important recreational iconic fisheries. That these habitats are vulnerable and they don't have explicit protections. So we tried to reach out to local partners through the Charlotte County and also through you guys, through CHNEP and the TAC, to work on some place-based science. So several years ago, we received a Restore grant for co-production. So this was for planning. Oh, sorry, let me back up a minute. Got ahead of myself. So I'm just going to talk about these habitats for a minute. So the nursery habitats that snook and tarpon use, they spawn offshore or out by the passes, and then their larvae will come through the passes and through our tidal creeks up to the headwaters of them. So they're going to push through the tidal creeks and the mangroves into these coastal ponds and these salt marsh habitats. They're going to go as far away from the marine fish predators as they can get. And they spend their first year or two of life growing up in these nursery habitats. And then they'll traverse back through that gauntlet into the tidal creeks and into the estuaries to join the adult populations. But as you can see from this picture here and from the pictures I have on these next slides, we are going way too far ahead. I might need to sit closer.
Do you want to sit where I'm sitting? Come sit in my seat, and then you can be right next to the computer.
Yeah. So these habitats are right at the edge of the
reserve, and they're right up against coastal development. So we're talking about the eastern side of the harbor, like right up along Burnt Store Road, where we have all those massive developments going in, and then on the western side of the harbor, on the Cape Hayes Peninsula. That's the photo that you see on the left here, where we have all this platted development, and then the ponds come right up next to the roads, basically, and the development goes right up along them. So they're under threat to being lost by development. There are opportunities here for conservation. There's opportunities here for more sustainable development. So that's where we wanted to bring in a lot of our partners. And so what we did with this planning grant was we had a year of funding where we held these 4 workshops where we held them through the Habitat Conservation Subcommittee of this group. And you see all of the partner logos here of everybody who participated in those workshops. And we co-produced this plan. We identified the science needs that we had. We identified the management needs in order to implement further management actions, what science was going to be needed to better inform management at the state level and also at the county level to protect these lands or these habitats, things like that. So we spent a year with all of these folks, created this plan, and now we're in the process of implementing this plan. And so the management decisions that we're trying to inform, we have 2 different levels here. We have 2 different groups of managers. We have the Charlotte County. So they are in the process of making amendments to their comprehensive plan that they roll out every 5 years. Their next one's in 2028. And in this comprehensive plan, they can set, you know, what their goals and objectives are. So then they can use this to create county codes. So they can set their goals and objectives for land conservation and direct their urban planning. If they want to do enhanced stormwater management, or land conservation, things like that. And then at the state level, Jamie, her group is looking at conducting wetland restoration in 2028. Is it possible to get that?
Oh, it came up again.
Off of it, thank you. And so, and they're also looking at, FWC has a landscape conservation initiative and looking at land management plans. So by looking at what we're looking to do is incorporate our juvenile sportfish habitat work into their land conservation initiatives. So we're trying to get some of the estuarine and coastal areas into the landscape conservation instead of just looking at those inland coastal corridors, but also thinking about our blueway corridors and our coastal habitats as well. And I know that I want to take a step back for a second. I know that CHNP has a very large watershed and we have a lot of inland counties here. And one of the other kind of neat things about this project is I know this is very coastal focused. I'm very focused on these two iconic sportfish, but this framework could potentially be used in other counties. It's a co-production of science. We're getting scientists and managers in the room together to address problems. And we're hoping that the tools that we come up with could be transferred to other species, to other habitats, to other counties throughout Florida. We've already had our Division of Marine Fisheries Management excited about this and wanting to transfer it to other portions of Florida when we haven't even fully developed it here yet. So in case those of you inland aren't so excited about tarpon like I am, just thinking about this in the framework of co-production and producing tools together with scientists and managers. That's another benefit of this project. So our project goals here, really we're completing a series of projects that we identified in that research and application plan in order to develop science-based decision support tools for the county and for state managers and also for other groups to use for conservation planning, for conservation policies, habitat management, and urban development planning. And all of this is under our shared goals of ensuring environmental stability and economic resilience for our area. So ultimately, we're creating this, what we're calling a conservation opportunity index. So we're taking into account our fisheries data, we're taking into account stormwater management, land use planning, habitat degradation, sea level rise, local ordinances, and we're pulling all of that information together from all of these different projects to then create this decision support tool. So I'm going to walk you through what those different projects are, parts of the project are, and kind of what our co-production looks like. So this started years ago with our fisheries biologists getting together with our land use planners and coming up with these different steps that we need to do. So these include additional fisheries sampling to identify as many of the different habitats as possible across Charlotte County that these fish are using. And then a combination of different models. So we need some habitat models, some hydrologic models, so that we can plan under different scenarios of development build out. And then all of this in sea level rise scenarios. And then all of that information gets compiled, will get compiled together and put into this vulnerability index that then goes into that conservation opportunities mapping or that GIS tool that then we will give back to the planners and the managers at Charlotte County and the state so that they can then use to better inform their management decisions and their land use planning. So also a very iterative process. We have semi-annual and quarterly meetings where we keep our scientists and managers in the loop and see if things are changing and if we need to pivot as we go. This is a 5-year project. We are halfway through it right now. Got ahead of myself there. So we are halfway through our project right now. We're doing 3, we're in year 3. So we are in our product development. We've completed some of our modeling and some of our modeling is ongoing. We have ongoing fisheries sampling. And then over the next 2 years, we're really going to dive into our data analysis and our draft tools, and then start to share those draft tools with you guys. We're going to be giving you a preview of those today. And then we're really going to be looking for feedback and then have our ability to incorporate those into the county process. To click this too many times.
Yeah.
Okay, so into some of our preliminary results. So we're doing some extensive fish surveys. Over 3 years, we have identified 92 potential ponds. This is just to show you what our gear looks like and what some of the sizes of the fish are. Here's our sampling universe. It's a little difficult to see here, but the pink, what's outlined in green are the tidal creeks, and then what's outlined in pink are those 90 or so coastal ponds. The yellow ponds are reference ponds that we have sampled in before, and we know we have baseline data for them. And so these yellow ponds are ones that we're sampling in every year so that we can have a reference of recruitment into these ponds. And then the pink ponds we're getting in once during this 3-year period. We also have 2 areas or 3 areas outlined in those white boxes where we're tagging fish because a nursery habitat, in order to really define a nursery habitat, there's a lot of different characteristics that go in there, and you need to make sure that the fish are using that habitat, that they are growing in that habitat, and then that they are emigrating and joining the subadult and adult populations. So we're tagging some select fish as well with acoustic tags to track their emigration. So we're trying to come at the fishery side of it with to get as much data as possible there. We're also characterizing the habitats in the water with YSIs and things like that while we're in there taking those samples. So this is the part of the project that Dave Blewett is leading. So if you have further questions on this part later, hopefully Dave can help answer those. But our reference ponds, we're sampling them yearly so that we can get sport fish recruitment strength. We're also sampling them yearly for community sampling. So what we're doing for the community sampling is getting an idea of the prey and the competitors that are in these ponds. And then our survey ponds, these are those ponds that were outlined in pink. And we identified them based on vegetation type that's around them. And our goal is to sample as many of them as possible, to sample at least half of them during 3 years. These we're not sampling for prey, we're just sampling these for sport fish. And here's our preliminary results from our first 2 years. We've gotten into about 40 ponds so far. Our juvenile tarpon have ranged from 39 to over 400 millimeters standard length. And our snook have ranged from 43 to 520 millimeters standard length. Our first year, we had really strong recruitment of both snook and tarpon into the ponds, which was really exciting. Our second year, which was this past year that just finished up, we had a lot less recruitment. But as you know, we had a lot more environmental difficulties. Oops, that slide didn't make it in. We had a lot more environmental challenges this past year with the drought. So that is one of the reasons why we wanted to sample our reference ponds every year, was so that way we know that if these fish don't need to have a strong recruitment every year in order to survive. So if we were to sample only 1 year and it was year 2, we might have a very different conclusion than if we sampled in year 1. So we try to sample regularly over time in order to be able to capture that recruitment variability. Also to be able to capture that environmental variability as well. So moving on to another aspect of this project was taking the Charlotte Harbor habitat evolution model that CHNEP had done, had contracted ESA to complete several years ago. And we had them zoom in at a finer scale at our study sites to update it really for sea level rise, several different sea level rise scenarios. To zoom in at a finer resolution. So first they went out and characterized for site locations, land elevations, and then they extrapolated that across the project area. This part of the project has been completed. So they did projections for us looking out to 2040 and 2070 at 2 different sea level rise scenarios. The intermediate low and intermediate high, both with low accretion. And we're looking at that Cape Hayes and Eastern Harbor areas. So I'm just going to share with you today. Oh, it's cut off. Do you see it on there? Nope. Okay. These should be the, see if it says it on the other one. These should be the high sea level model, high sea level projections. This report I have completed, so if anyone wants to see this in further detail, I'm willing to share out the PDF of this report. But basically what this showed us was the importance of habitat evolution and habitat migration into the future. We see that we're really going to be losing a lot of uplands. A lot of the uplands, so they're that orange color, are going to be lost to mangroves, which are that neon green, and then seagrass is that fuchsia, that purple color. So over time, we're really going to, and with sea level rise, we're going to be losing a lot of those uplands, because the uplands aren't going to have much space to migrate to because of development. Yes.
So like on the third one, it looks like we lose mangroves in 2070. Is that because there's also no room for those to migrate?
Exactly. Yeah.
To build out.
Yeah. Yeah. So we go from 2020 to 2040 to 2070 here. And we see a similar situation on the east wall, on the eastern side of the harbor as well.
Yeah. Are these state lands, like public lands, or is this like including private land?
This is including private lands as well.
So there's another variable.
Yes. Yeah. And then, so what we did was, what we wanted to do was, okay, so this is great. So what I'm seeing is that we're going to be having a lot more interconnected. A lot of these mangroves are going to end up being open water or seagrass habitat. So we're going to be losing a lot of those tidal creeks. So how does that affect the ponds and the nursery habitat that our fish are currently using? So in 20 years from now, in 40 years from now, what are those habitats going to look like? So we asked them to take data on the ponds that we currently have data for. And we gave them our information on like what ponds the snook are currently using, what ponds the tarpon are currently using. And we asked them to throw that into these models and then predict what ponds will be used in the future by those fish. So they color coded it here. So the red ponds are ones that tarpon use, and the yellow ponds are ones that snook use, and those orange in the middle are ones that are used by both. So from the left, you see is the current conditions, and the right, those future conditions in 2040. And you see that basically all of those tarpon ponds are going to become snook ponds or mixed use ponds. So this is really giving us the idea that we need to not necessarily plan for conserving the habitats they're using now, but plan to conserve the habitats that they're going to use in the future. So it's kind of a different type of conservation and restoration that we've done previously. And this is just another example on the eastern side of the harbor too. You'll see that a lot more, you don't see really any ponds on the right side that are red. Granted, these are ponds that only have current usage from snook and tarpon. So my prediction would be that some of those ponds that don't have any color on the right-hand side that are currently freshwater would be tarpon ponds in the future. They only used the ponds that we had data for this one. This is one of the models. So this was the habitat evolution model, really based off of sea level rise and habitat migration. So then the next question that we had was hydrologic modeling of stormwater and drainage scenarios. This project is being completed by a graduate student and her professor at the University of Florida. This one is ongoing. We should have final results by December. So what they're looking at is they're using the Stormwise model, and they're trying to give us different predictions of scenarios of drainage impact of build out of this currently undeveloped neighborhood, and how different build out scenarios could affect drainage patterns and flow patterns to those tidal creeks and to those stormwater coastal ponds. And this is trying to help answer some of the questions of like what levels of development are compatible with ensuring fish habitat conservation into the future. What are the potential impacts of changes to stormwater management and different drainage scenarios and things like that. And so far, and so they're running these simulations. These are continuous simulations. They're also running them under those 2040 and 2070 sea level rise scenarios. They're looking at a full build out of that neighborhood. And they're also looking at trying to simulate like a green up infrastructure type scenario. So they're looking at like different levels of impervious, what's the word? I want to say solution, and that's not right. Surface. Sorry, I told you guys I'm slow right now. Migraines are not fun. And yeah, so what they're finding right now so far is that the preliminary results seem to be that most of the changes that they've been observing have been more from sea level rise than from development, which has been a little not exactly what we were expecting. It's been a little surprising for us. We thought that we would see a bigger impact of development on this aging stormwater infrastructure there. So they're going back and looking at making sure they're working closely with Molly and Brandon at the county to make sure that they have all of the correct plans for the culverts and all of that. but yeah, so they're helping us figure out, they're looking at like the engineered ponds and how they capture and retain water, and how the water flows, and enters these tidal creeks and coastal ponds and things like that. And Molly can probably help us speak a little better to that if you guys have any questions on that. And then the last part of this that pulls it all together is our habitat risk assessment. So this is pulling in information from our fisheries monitoring, from our partners at Bonefish Tarpon Trust, of their fisheries data. It's also pulling in land use and zoning, habitat data, impervious surface data, and we're looking at this at both the vulnerability of the habitats and the value of the habitats. And so this is an ongoing process, and this is what's really creating that GIS, that mapping tool. So the first part that they did was they just kind of mapped out all of those ponds and put buffers around them to see how close they were or they are to the development and to the lands that could get developed. So this is just an example illustrating like different scales of the analysis, but then they take into account a lot of pond level metrics from our sampling data, and then proximity based metrics as well. That's that geospatial data. And then the catchment scale metrics. So that's going to be where that hydrologic modeling will get inputted into this as well. Because basically each tidal creek and each chain of ponds has its own mini watershed. So what we're looking at here is they're taking, we'll dive into each portion of this over the next couple of slides, but this risk assessment is looking at both the vulnerability and the value of these habitats. At first, it was just called a vulnerability index, but it's evolved into this full risk assessment. So it's looking at, each one has a scoring matrix. So on the left, we have the vulnerability criteria where it gets a normalized score. And then we'll have the value criteria, which also becomes normalized as well. And then they go into this conservation opportunities index where you'll have the value on the x-axis and the vulnerability on the y-axis. So then we can see low vulnerability, high value, things like that. I'm going to walk you through this a bit. So this one, we're looking at the vulnerability scoring. So these scores get normalized from a 1 through a 3, where 3 is red, that stoplight color. 3 is very vulnerable. So these categories depend on, so we have an existing development. So if there's a lot of development already around that area, that pond, development potential, land use type, amount of impervious surfaces, and then also that response to sea level rise. So that's where the HEM modeling and the sea level rise is coming into play. So this is the vulnerability of that habitat to be lost in the future. And then the next score is the value score. So this stoplight is flipped. This one, a 3, is green. So this means it's highly valuable. So we have our sport fish occurrence as one of these metrics. So this is where our data would come into play, or if we don't have any data there, it wouldn't get scored on that one. This is habitat suitability. So if it has that mangrove or that marsh vegetation around it, the habitat connectivity. So is this habitat connected, giving the sport fish the opportunity to enter and exit? And then the hydrologic connectivity. Again, it's slightly slightly different than the habitat connectivity. So the habitat connectivity has to do with suitable habitat near it versus the hydrologic connectivity has to do with the actual connection of water flow into and out of that pond. And then the last one is existing land use. So this incorporates protected lands versus private lands. So a lot of these current ponds that are currently used are in the preserve. But I think a lot of the future ponds are not inside the preserve. So that's where that characteristic would come in. And so out of the ponds, they've run this so far on the ponds that we have fish data for. So these are preliminary results. Eventually we will have all of as many of those 90 ponds as possible with a score. You see that we have several ponds that have fallen out in that high value, high vulnerability area. We have some that have fallen out in the low value, low vulnerability area and all across this scoring. So the idea is that this will be turned into a mapping tool. And so we can use that and share that with you guys and our other partners who are looking to conserve areas or looking to restore areas. And so depending on what your goal is, you might be more interested in a high vulnerable, high value area, or you might be interested in one of the other areas, depending on if you're talking about restoring an area or if you're talking about conserving an area. So what we might want to, we want to conserve those highly vulnerable, highly valued areas. But we know that those areas that are low vulnerability and high value are already inside the preserve, so we might not need to do anything with those. So this is a tool that can help us and help our partners assess where we want to put our efforts for conserving these habitats or restoring them. And then this is a preview of what that tool is going to look like. If we had more of it up and running, I would take you to the website and we could play around with this tool. But this is just a screenshot. But right now, if it's a GIS online based tool where you can toggle on and off the different watersheds for each of the creek systems, you'll be able to zoom in on the pond level and see if it's a highly vulnerable or valuable pond to see what that scoring is. The other really neat thing is you'll be able to click on the land parcel levels as well. So you'll be able to zoom in to see if it's public or private lands. So it should turn into a very useful conservation planning tool. And then the last part is our part with the county is we're hoping to turn this, we will be turning this into an overlay district. The county uses these overlay districts in their land use planning. That's basically, it's a GIS layer at the parcel level. So they use it for land use planning and developing and permitting. And they've been walking us through their permitting process. So when somebody goes to pull a permit to develop on their land parcel, this could potentially pull up this sport fish overlay layer. It could pull up a flag saying, like when they put their permit in, application in, it could say like, hey, this is in the sport fish conservation zone. It might need enhanced stormwater infrastructure, or something like along those lines, might need enhanced stormwater fisheries review, or something along those lines, depending on how the county wants to enact rules based off of this. But it could be a tool for them, just like they have, like they have flags for wetlands and flags for gopher tortoises and things like that. We're trying to help have this as a layer that they would be able to use. Provide this as a tool for them. So right now we are in our conservation planning stage. We have those preliminary results that I've shared with you so far. We are working with the county to help support language that they're looking to adopt in their comp plan. We are working on developing that overlay district. We are developing our conservation opportunities index. We have pulled in partners from CHNEP and from this team and from land conservation groups. And also from the University of Florida, our IFAS, our extension agent, Kate Rose, has been joining us. She's helping us with our outreach. So we're starting to roll this out. This year, we're going to start to bring some outreach presentations to the public to start to garner some public support. We have an outreach presentation group meeting in the next couple of weeks. So we're going to start to hold some public stakeholder meetings in advance of the comp plan opening to talk about the importance of sport fish and these habitats to sport fish and why we care about them, and what these tools are that we're creating and hoping that the county will use. Did I miss anything, Dave and Molly?
Remind me, did the vulnerability index, did that include sea level rise or it did not?
It does.
It does, okay.
Yep, so the vulnerability index does include sea level rise. The last thing I wanted to share too is that we have two websites for this. One is hosted under the Water Atlas. That was a requirement of our co-production, our very first year of funding, our workshops, and we will continue to update that website, right? As we have more products. It hasn't been, we haven't uploaded too much to it yet because we've just been in our first two years of gathering information. And then our other website is our Restore Science Program. They have a website for each of their projects that they fund. But eventually I think we're hoping to house our conservation opportunities index through the Water Atlas. So that would be a tool for all of our conservation partners to use.
Yeah, I would just add that the Water Atlas currently has the habitat evolution model and habitat resiliency to climate change layers. GIS layers are in the resiliency interactive mappers for every water body, basin, and watershed in the CHNEP area. And, you know, obviously like sea level rise affects coastal areas, but inland we use some different approaches for looking at habitat impacts from climate change, including changes to groundwater levels that might occur with increased heat and drought and that sort of thing. So you will see a variety of different approaches being employed depending on where you are in the CHP area, but it is all available and on those interactive resiliency maps on the Water Atlas. And then this project, we hope to have, you know, some final layers from this project integrated into those resiliency mappers as well. And the idea is that we also put the vulnerability assessments, the adaptation action area plans. GIS is going in county by county now. As we finish these projects, we are taking the GIS, like the most pertinent layers, not all the layers, but putting those into the resiliency mapper so that you can actually go there and it's a one-stop shop to like look at all the different resiliency data that's being generated that overlaps certain parcels or your watershed area. So it's meant to be a hub and a resource for you all. So please check it out. It's continually being enhanced and will be added to as we get additional information.
Courtney? Questions?
Question if we have time.
Yeah, we have,
I, working for local government, I found the district overlay part discussion interesting. And so I was just wondering, as far as the conversations you've been having with Manatee County, these are gonna be a couple questions wrapped into one, but Have you been able to gauge their interest on developing more protective standards for these vulnerable areas? And what do you have in mind of what those standards would be? And would they apply to both existing development or both existing and future development?
So, the folks that we've been working with in Charlotte County are interested, and supportive. There's a lot of bureaucracy that's, holding up the ability of counties and municipalities to make stricter.
Well aware of that.
Yeah. So we're fighting against that. So the hope at the moment, or the plan at the moment, is more to be able to get the values and goals put into the comp plan and have it in place so that have it primed and ready, so that if and when in the future they can implement enhanced stormwater management or enhanced development, they can. And this area on Cape Hayes is a neighborhood that hasn't been developed yet. Power just got run to it in the past couple of years, and houses are slowly popping up, but it's very much all single family homes. They have, with land use planning, a little bit more flexibility for stricter guidelines, from my understanding, when it comes to if it's a bigger development coming in to put in like an apartment complex or something like that. So that's why we're kind of looking at like, could there be more swales or impervious surfaces or green infrastructure, or how well will the current old stormwater pond system hold up and things like that. But there's some appetite. It's just.
Yeah, I know. We can't. We got hit by 3 storm surge events and have all these ideas about how we could make it better, and we can't. So
Yeah, exactly.
Well aware of that.
Yeah, so we're trying to provide as much of the science to support it when it's ready.
Okay, thank you.
Science, and then now we're working on the public support. That's the other part of it.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on that point. I really admire this approach to the co-production of science, linking the science with the managers with the policy, because usually it's the policy end that falls off the cliff.
Yeah.
To have that incorporated with an end in mind is really powerful, I think. I wanted to ask about the original stakeholder group that was involved in the ideation. Did that include landowners, developers, basically the end users who these regulations might ultimately affect?
The only landowners who came were local fishing clubs who were residents, but they received invites, but they didn't participate. We have had county commissioner support throughout the process. We have given them updates every couple of years. We're due for another one.
I guess following up on Dana's point as well. So in the absence of the regulation side of it to control the development and whatnot, have you started like a white paper, some guidelines or something that could be inform the design of these stormwater ponds? Or it's like, I think Jennifer, you did the playbook thing for the lake, something like that can like inform like what level of outflow you need, or you want to restrict the stormwater ponds to, or retention times, like some of that.
Yeah, that kind of stuff would be our next step. Unfortunately, this grant didn't have enough funding. It's a funny thing to say because it was a large grant. We didn't have quite enough funding for the outreach component, but that's where we're getting to now. And with Kate Rose is trying to help us with being able to produce some of those kinds of documents, and that's what we're hoping some of our partners will be able to help as well, to produce some of those sorts of things. Yeah.
Sorry, go.
The other thing that's come out of this that's been super helpful is pulling in land conservation groups, because a lot of the guidance we've been given has been like, try to purchase tracts of land to preserve and conserve. So that's what one of the other side goals, this conservation tool. Is when we first got into this, we were thinking the tool was really going to be that overlay district for the county, and now it's evolved to have multiple uses, which is really exciting.
Good segue. So for those future uses, so when we're looking at some of these future ponds, and we may be looking at from a restoration perspective, if they're on improvable land, it'd be good to have some guidelines of, should we be managing, trying to restore these for tarpon, or should we be looking to restore them more for snook, if that's where they're going to be in the future, or conversely, these other ones that maybe come online as a tarpon habitat.
My gut at the moment says to be able to preserve the tracts of land between them, and to let that habitat migration happen naturally. But if we're looking for areas to restore, we can dive in to the nitty-gritty and find them.
Kevin, did you have a question?
I was just gonna. I'm involved in other NOAA RESTORE Science projects.
Yeah.
And core to those projects is end users who focus on the co-development of the science to the management to the end users. So there's always kind of that focus, and I'm sure that's in this project as well.
Yes. End users are hard to grab a hold of.
Depends on,
Yeah.
depends on what we try very hard to get to all the end users that we can in these projects. And it depends on their motivations and participation. But that's still like the product that's developed will be address their concerns. Yeah.
Oftentimes they wait until they see what they have to lose, which is usually at the end of the process.
Right. And when it's parcels, individual land parcels that are owned by folks across the country or across the world, it makes it even more challenging. But there is a homeowners association, and so we will loop them in. We're just waiting to have more concrete results.
It's not just the private landowners, it's the decision makers, and so you're set, even though they may not necessarily right now be super open to participating. It's developing the science they need to make those decisions.
Thank you.
Right, I think we have time for one more question. If anybody, Lily, did you have a question?
Yeah. So I haven't checked the water atlas yet for the habitat vulnerability or the habitat migration. Does it extend south in here?
It's just Charlotte County.
Okay.
At least our portion of it is, but the CHNEP's full habitat covers
Okay.
the whole area.
With like the correct like hydrology and habitat data, since the model was also able to predict future ponds with tarpon and snook, do you think it could predict ponds that might have tarpon or snook in the southern areas?
Potentially, we could also give you things to look at visually, based on the types of habitats that they use. Yeah, it could be applicable doing just a GIS survey, like in Estero Bay or south.
Yeah, it'd be like the exercise we did to pick the survey ponds. We picked the 92 survey ponds, the ones that we wanted to sample, what we thought would be potential nurseries. You could do that same thing in your area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like, I think we're getting 80% of those coastal ponds have sport fishing done.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If people have more questions, maybe because I know I have some questions. Reach out to you. Please reach out to me. And then I know I called out some folks by name here, but Wally, Dave,
Jamie, Andy, Jennifer, there's several folks in the room who are on the project team, and you're always welcome. We have, one of our meetings every year is open to the whole Habitat Subcommittee and anyone from this group. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Courtney. That was so interesting. I always love when you all give your updates on that project. I am invested.